What were the most important takeaways for fantasy football coming out of the Week 9 Sunday action in the NFL? It's time to find out right here and right now as another week of Locked On Fantasy Football kicks off with Roundup Monday.
You are Locked On Fantasy, your daily NFL fantasy podcast. Part of the Locked On Podcast Network, your team every day.
Greetings, everyone, and welcome to another edition of the Locked On Fantasy Football Podcast. As usual, I'm your host, Vinnie Iyer. When I'm not doing this, I'm writing about NFL and fantasy football for SportingNews.com. A lot of surprise results there on Sunday. Shocking upsets, shaking up the playoff picture. We're at the halfway point as we go, we know, all the way through Week 18 now with 17 games on the schedule, so a little longer fantasy football schedule, but a lot of weird things happened there. We knew we were due for that here in early November. Very odd set of results there. Some things were spectacular. Some things were just downright disappointing. We always break down the good, bad, and ugly for you here on Roundup Monday as we kick off another week of Locked On Fantasy Football. We go through this every week, look at what happened, then we turn our attention to the waiver wire on Pickup Tuesday, players you must target there to help your teams. Then we break down the next week's set of games there, back-to-back matchup Wednesday, matchup Thursday. Then we put everything we've learned in a blender and look at it from a DFS perspective for Lineup Friday, looking at the players you should target there as the core on DraftKings and FanDuel lineups, as well as injury updates you need to know and anything relevant from Thursday Night Football. So it's a progressive podcast every day of the week here. We call Locked On Fantasy Football. Thanks again for joining us. We'll get into all the games there. We'll break down the 12 games that we saw there. A lot of good action there that we need to break down and try to make sense of here, quite frankly, here on Locked On Fantasy Football. Thanks for making Locked On Fantasy Football your first listen every day. We are free and available for you on all platforms. All right, let's dive right in. We'll start with the 1 p.m. Eastern Time game. We had the Vikings and Ravens, another wild Vikings game, another wild Ravens game. They went to overtime here. The Ravens, couple possessions traded, they finally get the game-winning field goal there by Justin Tucker. So two cardiac teams in purple. And let's look at the Vikings side of things. We knew it could be a Justin Jefferson type game, and it was. It wasn't a massive Justin Jefferson type game. I thought the Ravens secondary played pretty well overall, but there were some matchups to exploit there. We said away from Marlon Humphrey. So Justin Jefferson has that early long touchdown to make his day pretty good here. And then Adam Thielen looked pretty dire for Adam Thielen in this matchup. Then he got matched up with Anthony Everett in the end zone and comes up with a touchdown. So Adam Thielen always finds a way, it seems like, to produce even when things are really quiet. He's had really one terrible clunker game this season. I think that came against the Browns, but this one he delivered a touchdown late. It still wasn't all that pretty here for Adam Thielen, but we told you that. We thought that based on the speed of Jefferson, giving the Ravens more trouble, that he would be the guy while they could contain Thielen there, especially with Marlon Humphrey. But they got Thielen in a good matchup in the red zone. Kirk Cousins ends up with 3 scores, does 2 there via the air to Jefferson and Thielen, and the other one came on the ground on a rush that he pilfered from Dalvin Cook. So frustrating for Dalvin Cook owners because he managed to have a pretty good game here against a tough Ravens run defense. He did have 100 yards, so more than that in this game. We like him to get a little bit more involved in the passing game, really, when he's not scoring, but tough luck there and him not pushing over the goal line. They reviewed it, and Cousins got the quarterback sneak for his third touchdown there, it turned out. So, again, Dalvin Cook looks pretty good, looks fully healthy, no issues there with him. We just want a little bit more consistency from the Vikings offense. We said you could see a little bit more of Tyler Conklin at tight end based on this matchup the Ravens were giving up. And he made some good plays here, decent based on the tight end landscape where we're going here. But Jefferson and Thielen, something we have to look at week in and week out. I think you can trust Cook pretty much now that he's going to come through. He's going to get the volume. I know where Alexander Madison to be seen in key roles here. So Dalvin's a man. He's fully healthy here. And the Vikings, again, weird team that they can't win these close games consistently with Mike Zimmer. But for fantasy purposes, they're getting it done in different ways with their 3 principles here. And I would expect Conklin, if you're looking to stretch a fourth principal out of the Vikings, he'd be the guy right now. Consistently, he's been more involved than KJ Osborne, has flashed in a few games, but the first tight end right now, filling in for Irv Smith Jr., a lot more integral to what the Vikings are doing than their third wide receiver based on Conklin's availability and help in the running game there as a blocker here from Minnesota. So pretty simple with the Vikings every week to figure them out here. Just a matter of who gets it done more, Jefferson or Thielen. This game, JJ was due, and it happened here on the outside with his speed, built to beat the Baltimore secondary. Now, with the Ravens offense, more struggles with their defense. They gave up a big lead in this one. The Vikings special teams also scored on a long kickoff return to open up the second half. So the Ravens are trailing, and these game scripts have been very good for Lamar Jackson. He did have two interceptions this game. One was deflected there in overtime there that we thought they were going to go in and score the winning touchdown. So maybe we were denied another touchdown there for Lamar Jackson, but he ran at will against his Vikings defense. He threw at will, so he's the leading rusher. Still no Latavius Murray. So Devonta Freeman still has a lot of use here. Le'Veon Bell did score again, but Freeman did score on a short reception, and he was the more effective running back. So Freeman is the guy here. We don't know if Latavius Murray can return on a short week. It's Thursday night against the Dolphins here, but right now it's all Lamar and these passing weapons. Now, Mark Andrews has really been hurt, I think, by the Rashad Bateman presence. Bateman is that other key possession receiver who can play off Marquise Brown. Brown had a big game here going over 100 yards. Unfortunately, the touchdowns through the air for Jackson here came to Freeman and Devin Duvernay, who made a great catch there, but Andrews didn't score. Bateman didn't score. Brown didn't score, so that was a disappointment. Brown is still their number one. Bateman is still useful as a wide receiver 3. Andrews saw a ton of targets in this game, 10 targets. In fact, he and Lamar just missed on a 30-yard touchdown there early in the game. So what we want Andrews to be a little bit more consistent, but we have to accept the fact that Bateman is here to stay as a key player here. Marquise Brown looks every bit the number one every week in this offense. The good news is, again, this Ravens team is going to throw it with their running game limitations and their defense not being as good. This week, it might be a different story. The Dolphins are a really bad run defense, so that should help Lamar. It's kind of his hometown team. We saw Lamar's breakout game against them 2 years ago in the opener, if you remember that. Him and Hollywood Brown destroyed the Dolphins. A little different Dolphins defense now, but still very exploitable here. So Lamar smashing it as a QB1 now with his running and passing, old school Lamar. One of the most reliable assets in fantasy football, especially with Murray not running, Josh Allen struggling, Patrick Mahomes not putting up numbers, Dak Prescott having an off game and not looking healthy. Lamar and Tom Brady are the most reliable guys now at quarterback in fantasy football now, week in and week out, with the way things have developed here. And no change here. But Freeman over Bell that you take by default. Again, we'll see if Murray can turn. Maybe you'll have to wait another week, but you would assume Murray was a little closer to returning here for Baltimore, that he should be back post-bye with another mini-bye here for the follow-up game there in Week 11. All right, let's turn our attention to another game involving an AFC team. The Patriots, they were on the road and in a little bit down the road from Baltimore in Charlotte here. The Patriots all over the Panthers here. Let's start with the Patriots takeaways. Again, not much to see there. And Harris got hurt again. So did Ramondre Stevenson. All of a sudden, Stevenson was involved as a pass-catching back. It was by design in this game. They were going to throw to their backs. Damian Harris did score again. That's what he always tends to do. But Stevenson looked pretty good. But both of them had to exit this game with head injuries. So we'll see how they can respond here as they go into the Browns matchup this week. So a lot of things to watch in that Patriots backfield. Maybe we'll see more of J.J. Taylor. Brandon Bolden could be the combination in the backfield this week. We just have to see how it goes when we hear about the protocol and all that for Harris and Stevens this week. So a little tough break there. Harris has been able to play through injuries and be okay. We'll see about Stevenson. He's a rookie, so they could easily deactivate him. But every time Stevenson fades away, we want to get in on him. Then every time Stevenson reminds us that, okay, he might be a rookie with some upside here in this backfield with Harris. And then we go running to him, and then he's a disappointment. So buyer beware there. Harris is still the bread and butter of what they want to do. So is Hunter Henry. He's a guy you can count on to get the key red zone and end zone looks from Mac Jones. Jonas Smith got hurt again with a shoulder injury. The wide receiver's not doing much. So when you're not looking at Harris or whoever the Patriots running back healthy du jour is, then you have to look at Hunter Henry, but not much value here. We knew Mac Jones was going to struggle on the road against a pretty good and aggressive pass defense. That didn't materialize in this game, and then he wasn't needed much as the Patriots defense dominated. They did enough the running game and got the one score there from Henry. So typical formula for the Patriots. They're easy to read here. Whoever's getting the feature role at running back is the guy you're starting. There, Henry looking for the touchdown dependent guy there at tight end. And that's pretty much all you look at here with the Patriots and Mac Jones. Has to be in a really ideal matchup, and I would say the Browns this week are not one of those here in Week 10. All right, let's go to the Panthers. Sam Darnold, he's got to be benched here. The problem wasn't he playing through the concussion and the shoulder issue. The problem was just him making bad decisions, and he's dragging down this entire offense. I'm not saying that they put in P.J. Walker and he's going to be better. We saw enough of P.J. Walker behind Teddy Bridgewater last year to say it's not going to get better, but it's really destroying the value here of DJ Moore. And really, Robbie Anderson has pretty much disappeared. Terrace Marshall, if he had any value, is gone. Their tight end production went out the window when they traded Dan Arnold, so they have no one really here. DJ Moore is a talented receiver, and we saw it getting going early there in easier matchups with Darnold and Moore, but now Darnold's a complete and utter funky slump here altogether. So, yeah, I don't know. DJ Moore needs maybe a quarterback change, but again, Walker, are you really inspired? At this point, he can't get any worse the way Darnold's playing. So we'll see if Matt Rule makes a change. There were a lot of hints about it, given he saw Darnold throw another pick six, very sloppy with the interceptions all around. Bill Belichick fools Darnold again. So again, do they trust him at all going forward? It is a bye coming up, so maybe some changes in store here. They can prepare Walker better, but you can't really feel good about Moore as long as he's attached to this version of Darnold. The good news, however, is Christian McCaffrey returned. They said he was going to have a limited role, and it was limited at first. They didn't use him much in the passing game. Chuba Hubbard had a big catch. They worked in a little bit more behind McCaffrey. It wasn't the usual big workload, but he ends up with 100 yards from scrimmage, the 50 and 50 look. So it was kind of a cheap version of McCaffrey. He's the RB2 version of McCaffrey versus the RB1 without a touchdown, and part of that is Darnold. They need somebody who can move the ball down in the scoring position that's going to help McCaffrey. So I think this will be a very McCaffrey-centric offense, assuming he's a little bit healthier here for the next game, coming off the hamstring. But good sign there that he didn't have a setback and played really well here with the touches he got and looked pretty good out there, quite frankly, against the Patriots. All right, our next game in this early window that we want to talk about, the Browns and Bengals. What a game for the Browns. Their defense stepped up right away. Denzel Ward set the tone against the Bengals with the pick six of Joe Burrow. The Nick Chubb shot out of the cannon. We can say his calf injury is no longer an issue. He looked like the old explosive Nick Chubb in this game, and it's always good when you don't have Kareem Hunt to share with here. So none of that Dearness Johnson pilfering touchdowns and all that. It was the Chubb show with a pair of scores here and a long home run rush here. So old school Browns. And what happened as soon as you got rid of Odell Beckham Jr. and put him on the block here to be waived? You had Baker Mayfield play pretty well. That was the least surprising outcome here of this game. Now, Baker didn't have to do a lot, just more than 200 yards in this game, a couple scores there. But again, it was the running game, Nick Chubb setting things up, facilitating Baker. You have the defense playing well, playing off the running game. This is the Browns team that we expected here early in the season. All it took was being healthy. I mean, they've had a lot of guys in and out of the lineup on offense and defense. Jack Conklin and Kareem Hunt still need to come back for this offense. But minus OBJ, I felt like Baker Mayfield was just more relaxed. He loved having Donovan Peoples-Jones as his deep threat there to complement Jarvis Landry. He was throwing to the tight ends. Baker looks like he's going to reel off another hot second half here of the season. So like it, again, doesn't have a high ceiling because of running game and all that, but can have a pretty high floor. And we saw that here in this game for Baker. He just needed to get well game. And this one against the Bengals defense on the road was certainly that. So good play by Baker. DPJ is the new OBJ, except you can trust him more now that OBJ is out of the picture. And we know that Mayfield really trusts Peoples-Jones. And they wanted to unleash Peoples-Jones. That made the decision to move on from Odell a lot easier. So Peoples-Jones should get a lot more interest here as a wide receiver 3 with some upside going forward. Chubb is smashing it back as an RB1 and only helped by Hunt not being there. And Mayfield now in play as a streamer again. Now, for the Bengals, it was a rough outing for Joe Burrow. really Jamar Chase, this entire offense. Burrow still gets to 282 passing yards here, but the multiple interceptions, he didn't get to that 2-touchdown threshold like he'd been in every game here. So bad game for Joe Burrow. You'd have a big game for Joe Mixon, however. He had a couple scores in this one, so just didn't get the touchdowns there. Jamar Chase dropped some balls here. T. Higgins, Tyler Boyd, Jamar Chase, all pretty effective to some degree, but not the touchdowns, not the bigger game we were expecting. So overall, pretty bad game for the Bengals offense, save for Mixon and the couple of scores there for him. But the Bengals are still very potent, even with all those mistakes, can do some things here. So you knew Chase was going to have a bad game at some point. Denzel Ward being back on top of Greg Newsome, a rookie that they like at corner, was going to make it tough a little bit on the back end. We saw the real force of the Browns pass defense, so be wary here that that's the defense you're going to get in more games and not the one that struggled with Justin Herbert and the Chargers in that game a few weeks ago. All right, let's talk about our last 1 p.m. Eastern time game. This was the shocker. The Broncos over the Cowboys 30-16. It was 30-0 until the Cowboys had 2 garbage touchdown drives. You had the key receivers out for the Cowboys late in the game. They didn't risk Amari Cooper and CeeDee Lamb, but they had Malik Turner out there with Dak Prescott. So Prescott gets 2 touchdowns and 2 2-point conversions there to kind of salvage his day as a back-end QB1, almost borderline there. Otherwise, it was an ugly day for Dak Prescott. So that's the difference between fantasy and reality. He was pretty bad in reality. Had the turnovers there in the game. So overall, it was not a very good outcome here for what the Cowboys were looking for. Ezekiel Elliott in the running game, the game script was so negative. They got behind. Elliott played through a contusion. They couldn't get Tony Pollard. We thought it was going to be a positive game script where there were going to be a lot of Elliott Pollard. So 2 straight games there. Elliott wasn't effective last week against Minnesota. 2 disappointing games in a row for Elliott, partly because, again, the offense was limited last week by Cooper Rush, this week by Prescott not playing well. Awful games there for Cooper and Lamb as the Broncos secondary did a number here. Their pass rush was all over it. The Cowboys have missed 4 fourth down opportunities, so potential there for extended drives to score points. That didn't happen. Greg Zuerlein put up a 0 because of that, because of the late touchdowns and then no extra points there. So that was a brutal outcome. The Cowboys' defense was beat up. So everything you expected the Cowboys to do in this game to some level of effectiveness, minus Prescott cleaning up his numbers late, was pretty bad here for Dallas. And just a game that you just chalk up to the Broncos having their number. One of those bad days at the office for the Cowboys with a rusty Prescott in there. And again, the defense was terrible against the run, which they've been awesome against the run here. So on the Broncos side of things, that allowed Javonte Williams to break out for a 100-yard game here. Unfortunately, he didn't get a touchdown there. Teddy Bridgewater had a short touchdown. You had Tim Patrick score. You had Melvin Gordon. There's that pilferer. He scored another touchdown here. So not traded during the trade deadline, still there to steal touchdowns and keep production from Javonte Williams, unfortunately. But Javonte is going to have a big, big role next year, folks. I mean, they're not going to re-sign Melvin Gordon. Javonte can still break out here, but he's a guy that has a lot more running back 2 and flex appeal going forward. They smashed it in this really tough matchup. Gordon, again, more is going to fall in RB2 flex, and Williams there too, just based on continued sharing. As long as it keeps working for the Broncos, they're not going to deviate that from that much. And that's the sad thing, is that now they think they're winning again, so that means a lot of Gordon and still in there with Williams. So Williams is going to be capped by that, but we saw his immense talent come through here in this matchup for sure to run through that tough Dallas run defense. Gordon's still very productive. Cortland Sutton, we thought, could have a rough game here with Trayvon Diggs. That did happen. And Tim Patrick's not going away. Jerry Jeudy has been the man in the slot, but another development happened in this game is that Noah Fant was on the COVID-19 list, and Albert Okuganim got hurt in this game to back up, so they had to go there. Third tight end in this one, but that meant more for Patrick and Jeudy here as the possession receiver. Sutton is going to be hit or miss if they can't get the ball downfield or in the red zone in those type of situations. He's going to have a bad game. That's what happened here. But Patrick hasn't gone away. He's had 2 solid games here since the return of Jeudy. Jeudy looked a lot better in running his routes as well. But Patrick was the guy that had the best game. Again, we'll see how it plays out between Patrick and Sutton. That's where I'm more concerned. I think Judy's going to be just fine as a wide receiver 3-2 borderline going forward based on his usage here, and Bridgewater being his favorite guy. But Bridgewater seems to favor Patrick a little bit more on the outside in key situations than Sutton. So again, Sutton continues to be a very frustrating fantasy force here. He's so talented and so great, but I think with Drew Lock in there, maybe Sutton would have been a lot more effective. But it's more Judy, Patrick, short to intermediate guys, and we don't have your tight end available in Fant. That's going to change things. Fant is expected to return this week, by the way. So again, he should be cleared and back, and he target, and that could hurt again with these targets. But I think it's going to be Fant and Judy mostly going forward. But the Patrick Sutton thing is we're going to watch carefully here for Denver. All right, so there's a breakdown of the first 4 games there in the 1 p.m. Eastern time window for you. We'll break down 8 more before the show's over, so a little bit longer there, and we take our time here on Roundup Monday to give you everything you need. Does this sound familiar? You've got one device that lets you catch a game live, another that lets you stream your favorite shows. You're watching sports highlights on your phone, and you've got your neighbor's best friends login for the good stuff. Well, I want to tell you about a simple way to get all that entertainment you love without the hassle, and a great way to finally get your TV together. It's called Directv Stream and brings your live TV and on-demand favorites together like never before, so you can watch your favorite sports, movies, and shows all in one place. That means no more juggling remotes and no need to buy another device ever again. The best part, there's no annual contract. So get rid of the clutter and the confusion and get your TV together with Directv Stream. You can learn more at directv.com. That's directv.com. Compatible device required. Content varies by package. All right, we'll continue the show here looking at the next 4 games here and their takeaways from the Sunday weeknight action from a fantasy football perspective. Thanks for making Locked On Fantasy Football your first listen every day. We are free and available for you on all platforms. Let's go to the disappointment of the day. And you salvaged the game if you had Stephon Diggs in this one, but Bills and Jaguars, what a bad game for Buffalo's offense here. 9-6 is the final. The Bills lose it. Josh Allen, the quarterback, dominated by Josh Allen, the pass rusher here. Josh Allen sacks Josh Allen. He gets an interception of Josh Allen and a fumble. So 2 turnovers there from Josh Allen, forced by the other Josh Allen. So it was ugly. No touchdowns here for the Bills' explosive offense and one of the easiest matchups you're going to get on paper in the NFL in the Jaguars. But the Jaguars came to play, led by Josh Allen's namesake. So very disruptive. The Jaguars get their first true home victory with Urban Meyer. Their other one was in London against another AFC East foe, the Dolphins here. But this game was just a shocking result all around. Now, the Bills, part of it wasn't shocking that they held down the Jaguars, who couldn't do anything in this game either. They needed the leg of Matthew Wright to eventually come through here with a little bit more field goal love than Tyler Bass. But we knew that. I mean, and the Jaguars offense, I mean, completely terrible here. I mean, it's led by now Dan Arnold and Jamal Agnew. It continues to be that way. That's just bad offensive play calling when you have Marvin Jones, Laviska Shenault Jr. I know you lost DJ Chark, but let's not go into a total shell with our tight end and our hybrid kickoff returner, running back, wide receiver here in Agnew. So I don't know what to do here. Marvin Jones is just started out well, but things have just looked pretty bad here, and they've just gone to the shell. And it was even worse because they didn't have James Robinson in this game. And Carlos Hyde looked okay, but he wasn't all that effective. I think they should have let Trevor Lawrence loose. Maybe part of it was he had the low ankle sprain that caused him to come out of the game early here. But yeah, this passing game is just a mess. And this offense in general has nothing that you feel good about when Hyde is replacing Robinson. So predictable here. It was a tough matchup. Hyde is not as good as Robinson. You knew it was not going to be a very good game for him. He put together the yards based on volume, but nothing else to see there. So Jaguars pretty ugly. What happened to the Bills? I think the same thing is happening a little bit to the Chiefs. They're a big play offense. Teams are playing them, daring them to make the big play. You have Josh Allen hold the ball a little longer, force them to either scramble for yards and hold the ball too long in the pocket, looking for the big plays. And they have Emmanuel Sanders and Stephon Diggs. So there were some moments there. Diggs was decent, but not great. He's had a down season here as well. He came in with more wide receiver 2 or 3 numbers in this game. Sanders, wide receiver 3, was viable. Cole Beasley had a lot of volume, but not a lot of yards in this one either. So it was pretty ugly. So no Dawson Knox, I think, hurts more than you think for the Bills. He was coming on strong at tight end. He was a key target. He can create some mismatches and get down the seams. But they didn't have him. And when you hold the ball too long, looking for the big plays, and the Jaguars are playing safe, and they're not there, you got to adjust a little bit. And they were also hurt in the running game because Zach Moss had a good matchup, but he had a concussion in this game. The game script should have kept the running game intact a little bit more, but they couldn't get a lead here. They were struggling. They were trying to force things in the passing game. So overall, it's a interesting challenge there for Brian Dable. How do they adjust when you struggle against a really bad defense. So we'll have to see. They could get well here pretty soon, the Bills. I still trust them to do so. But again, yeah, you just never see this from this offense. Even in the game they lost a few weeks ago against Tennessee, they were still doing what they wanted offensively. So good game plan by the Jaguars, and the Bills have to be more patient. Maybe have to go back to using Beasley. Maybe Knox returns next week, spread it out a little bit more, get the underneath passing game and the running game going, and it'll reopen up the downfield passing game for Allen here going forward. I think the Jaguars just played the best they could to take away the home runs away from Allen. All right, let's go to the next game. It's the Texans and Dolphins, another AFC South, AFC East matchup. This was in Miami. Tyrod Taylor, if you plugged him in here, you're stuck without Kyler Murray, you were disappointed because he had good history against the Dolphins. He was playing really well before he got hurt, comes back from the hamstring. Dolphins defense was not very good, but keep in mind the Dolphins showed some signs last week against the Bills and quite that defense or offense as much as they could. So Tyrod really struggled, turned over the ball. You had Jacoby Brissett on the other side, and that killed the value of the Dolphins as well because their defense overachieved, so they didn't need to do much offensively. Myles Gaskin looked okay, did have a touchdown, but also lost a fumble. He didn't look great. He's just a guy here that you can squeeze out RB2 or flex value here. We knew as soon as Devontae Parker was ruled out, that was a big surprise there that he went back on injured reserve after he had a pretty good game last week. We knew it was going to be back to Jalen Waddle and Mike Gesicki. That did play out. They just didn't have big games in this one. Is game of attrition, grinding it out between these two teams, Brissett and Tyrod Taylor, two backup guys that used to play on other teams and started on other teams. We knew it was going to get pretty bad. So we kind of needed Tua Tagovailoa to make this a good shutout with Tyrod. And then we thought, okay, so we needed Tyrod to make this a Tua game. But guess what happens? You get with Tyrod and Brissett instead of Davis Mills and Tua. So a whole mess here. At least Gesicki had a nice catch there. Waddle was decent. Brandon Cooks was okay, but you expected a lot more offense with these two horrible defenses. But sometimes just bad teams in general are going to give you low-scoring games. So be wary of attaching your fates to players on bad teams because that can bite you very often, and even in a good matchup. And we saw that definitely with the Texans here and the Dolphins, really, quite honestly, in this game. Falcons and Saints. I mean, these are actually not two bad teams. Look now at the NFC standings, and these are the last two wildcard teams. The Saints and the Falcons would both be in the playoffs right now. The Falcons back at 500. The Saints dropped to 5-3, so 5-3 versus 4-4. The Falcons look really good. We thought they were going to struggle without Calvin Ridley. We thought Marshawn Lattimore was going to be on Kyle Pitts. Kyle Pitts did have a bit of a grinding game. And what did they do? They found Cordarrelle Patterson. They found Olamide Zaccheaus in the slot, who had 2 touchdowns there. Russell Gage was rather effective. So credit Arthur Smith and Matt Ryan once again. Down Ridley in this game. Just had Pitts going on the road against a very good Saints defense. They didn't force things with the run. They got creative in getting the ball to their playmaker of the year in Patterson and got it done here with Matt Ryan playing really well, improvising. I thought this was one of the better games I've seen Matt Ryan play in a long time. On the road, hostile environment, he scored a rushing touchdown. He was locked into all of his replacement receivers, including Zaccheaus. Now, would I go chase Zaccheaus' points? I mean, you could do that. You could also chase the points of Tajay Sharp from week 8 and try to get them in week 9. No, I think it's going to be a committee matchup-based thing. Patterson's still the only really reliable offensive cog, and Matt Ryan was pretty available, and it was hard to justify playing Matt Ryan. Again, without Ridley on the road, a team that kind of stymied Tom Brady in the same situation last week. So really surprising. But again, Arthur Smith keeps showing why he's a pretty good offensive mind, can adjust pretty well, can help his quarterback, and that's what we saw in this game for the Falcons. And they continue to do that really well here in 2021. And Falcons don't sleep on them. They're a better team than you think, and credit Smith for that, having an offensive-minded coach changing a few things there. Now, their defense wasn't that good. The Saints actually looked pretty good with Trevor Siemian. He had a couple touchdown passes here. He looked pretty good, found Marcus Callaway in a short one. You had Alvin Kamara have a big game. So Siemian was a better development for the offense than we thought. They stuck with him. They didn't go with the Taysom Hill wrinkle as much as we thought. We thought they might start Hill, but then they pivoted and went pure Siemian and mixed in Hill. So there's things they like about Siemian, and he showed it in this game. I mean, he stuck with it, had struggles for much of the game. He rallied them late. They had the go-ahead touchdown. Unfortunately, they gave away the winning field goal there in the last second to Younghoe Koo, but there were some good things the Saints did offensively. Simeon also facilitated Alvin Kamara to be effective as a runner and receiver. So that was good because we didn't want Taysom coming in and cutting Kamara's value. So really good to see Simeon facilitating a little bit more. Still nothing to trust there. The receiving core consistently. In this one, you're hoping for a touchdown pretty much. They still want to be a high volume running team there and put in Hill in some key red zone situations. But Kamara is going to be the bread and butter. And as long as Simeon is playing decent enough, you're going to see Kamara have some production. That's what we saw here. So interesting. We'll see if the Saints change things up based on the result of losing this game, or do they go in a different direction? So again, good results from the principals there, and surprising one from the Falcons for sure. Another surprising result was the Raiders and Giants game. And what happened to the Raiders offense? Derek Carr just seems to struggle against bad teams with decent defenses. We saw that against the Bears at home, happening against the Giants. He ripped apart the Eagles, and then decent production there, and then things just went south here after the bye. I mean, they came after the bye, and they played this way after they destroyed the Eagles before. I mean, it was just ugly. And the numbers were there. I mean, we saw Hunter Renfrow put up good numbers in this game overall. Darren Waller, remember Henry Ruggs III was out of the equation, so you knew it was going to be a lot of Waller coming back fully healthy after the bye. A lot of Renfrow. Those are the two trusted targets here for when Derek Carr. But I also told you that it was going to be about the running backs, and Kenny Drake has been unleashed a little bit as a runner and receiver to complement Josh Jacobs. So Jacobs' decent game from the receivers and all that here from Derek Carr. But I think we have a few more answers in this offense. If you forced in Bryan Edwards, it's still not happening. He's not interested in Edwards, even without Ruggs there as much. Waller and Renfrow, middle of the field, short to intermediate passing, occasional stretching the field for Carr. When he forces things downfield and they're not there, that's when Carr has a bad game, and that's what we saw here this game. So unfortunate, the Giants, by the numbers, were a good matchup here for a stream for Derek Carr, but just pretty brutal here with the turnovers and not finishing drives pretty well here for the Raiders. So bad day at the office all around for the Raiders, offensively and defensively in this one. But Renfrow, Waller, Jacobs, and Drake. Jacobs is an RB2. Drake is a flex. Hunter Renfrow is a wide receiver 2-3 borderline based on his volume, and Waller is a tight end 1. That's where we're going most here. And Carr, you just have to re-examine if you really need to go there versus your other option at quarterback in a given week. Now, Giants pretty ugly here. They were into their little shell mode. Evan Ingram was their best receiver on the tight end. Caden Smith, they lost their second tight end. They didn't feature Kenny Golladay coming back from the injury as much as expected. Sterling Shepard and Dante Pettis didn't play. Didn't have a lot of Kadarius Toney in this one. So went a little bit conservative there with Ingram working there, and a lot of Devontae Booker as well. But Devontae Booker gets hurt in this game here, so they had to go with Elijah Penny there late in the game. So we'll see how Devontae Booker is with the hip injury. We also know that Saquon Barkley is nearing a return with the ankle injury, almost going to play this week. We assume he'll be pulled off the COVID-19 list there to be cleared here for their next game. So something we want to watch in this backfield. It might be pivoting back to Barkley here with Booker on the shelf. Elijah Penny also could be the next man up here. So a lot of things we want to monitor here in New York. But the receiving core, very hard to trust from week to week. Ingram could really go away, and it could be a Toney game. Shepard could return. Who knows what's happening with the Giants passing game, but it completely can't be trusted with Daniel Jones. The only thing right now is the running backs seem to be working in some form here from scrimmage, but again, it could switch back to Booker to Barkley with Penny on standby here. The Giants defense, a bit of an anomaly here. They had a return for a touchdown in this one, but defense you absolutely cannot trust against better offenses for sure. All right, there's 4 more games in the books here on our extended Monday show called Roundup Monday, looking at all the important fantasy football takeaways from Sunday's action. We'll get into 4 more games, our final 4 games there, leading into Monday Night Football between the Bears and the Steelers. Built Bar is what I have to tell you about first. The best tasting protein bar ever. If you haven't tried a Built Bar by now, you're missing out. They say it's a protein bar, but it does not taste like one. You have to try one of these amazing bars yourself to believe it. Most protein bars are chalky wax. You're just plain hard to choke down. A Built Bar is soft, covered in 100% chocolate. When you bite into it, you know you're eating something different. It's more of an experience, one that you'll enjoy. In fact, you swear you're eating a candy bar. Built Bars are low carb, low calorie, low fat, low sugar, and high protein. So all the healthy benefits on top of just being purely delicious. And there's so many flavors. That is another great thing about Built Bar. There's so many mouth-watering flavors, including coconut, cherry barcia, raspberry, mint brownie, coconut almond, salted caramel, double chocolate, And they also have special limited time flavors coming out every 3 to 4 days at Built. So check their website often. You do not want to miss out here in November. Go to Built.com and use the promo code LOCK15, get 15% off your order. All you have to use the promo code LOCK15 for 15% off Built.com. And once you go to Built Bar, you won't go to any other protein bar. Trust me, they have the best flavors and taste out there. The protein bar that tastes like a candy bar, the protein bar that tastes and substitutes as a dessert. We're back and better than ever. A new web interface for the start of the basketball season, more props, odds, and lines than ever before. BetOnline remains your number one spot for all the basketball and football action of the season. Head to our new updated desktop or mobile website at time today to receive your 50% welcome bonus for your first deposit. All you have to do is use the promo code LOCKEDON to receive your bonus from basketball, football, NHL, boxing, now college basketball, right down to your favorite Vegas casino games. Don't wait to take advantage of all the amazing offers available for the 2021 season, whether it's NBA or college hoops, as well as a lot left here halfway through the football season in the NFL and heading down the stretch in college. BetOnline is the fastest and easiest way to bet on all your favorite sports. BetOnline, it's where the game starts. All right, it's time to close the show. 4 more games we'll have to get through. We're in the late window now. Let's go to the Chargers-Eagles game. This was in Philadelphia, not in Los Angeles, despite being in the 4:05 window here. Justin Herbert, good rebound game for Justin Herbert. Teams were playing him different. They were forcing him to be patient. What did we expect in this game? That Mike Williams was going to be contained and it would be an Eckler and Allen game. We told you that, and it was an Eckler and Allen game. Allen was targeted a lot. He dominated this Eagles secondary, who, by the way, lost both Darius Slay and Avonte Maddox during the game, so that helped, where Allen could just destroy the rest of their secondary here. Great route runner, short area of guy. He's going to dominate when you need him. And they kind of put him under wraps here and been the Mike Williams big play show. But the Eagles, we know what they did. They play their 2 deep safeties and go there and dare Justin Herbert to throw deep. So you had a lot of Keenan Allen. You had a lot of Austin Eckler, another solid game for him here. Herbert with 3 touchdowns as well. The tight ends we knew were going to be more involved. Jared Cook had a 2-point conversion along with his pretty solid day there behind Allen and receiving and Eckler. So, yeah, tight ends, backs, Allen, those are the type of players you're going to get when Justin Herbert's patient, goes down the field, marches them on long drives, doesn't force the ball to Mike Williams downfield. So, the Chargers probably figured out something here. It protects their run defense, which is very weak, sustaining long drives instead of going for the big plays. It's complementary football, helps Herbert out as well. And Herbert definitely benefited from that, getting that 3-score game with 1 on the ground here for the Chargers. They survive a tough trip to Philadelphia there and win. So Chargers looking good here as the leaders in the AFC West. I think they'll continue to play well down the stretch. And Herbert circling back as a QB1 that you can trust more in these types of matchups here. And good to see the principles go off for the Chargers. But again, that's why you have to be wary with Mike Williams in certain matchups. And this was one that called for that here. As again, teams are adjusting against these very explosive offenses to make them take long drives, be patient. It's happened with Mahomes, it's happened with Allen, it's happened with Herbert. Now, the way to get out of that is change your passing mentality, and that's credit to Brandon Staley and Joe Lombardi for doing that here and getting the win for the Chargers, and most importantly, getting Herbert back on fantasy football track. Now, the Eagles need to figure out something here, but because Jalen Hurts, we've been run dependent. He's got a high floor, but it's the second straight very quiet game from him. He did manage a touchdown in this one to Devonta Smith, who, don't get me started on Devonta Smith. He had 3 easy matchups in a row, didn't do anything. Hurts couldn't get him the ball. Then all of a sudden, the Chargers just missing Michael Davis and Asante Samuel, and he goes to work here. And so I don't get it with Devonta Smith. I think it's tied to Hurts here. Dallas Goedert had a good start in this game and a long catch, but he kind of tailed off in this one. He thought he was going to be busier in this matchup. So I think a lot of it is on Hurts and just not being accurate and seeing the field well. I mean, it's pretty much down to who's going to do anything decent in this passing game. Is it Goddard or Smith? Jalen Reagor is kind of an afterthought. I mean, they had a good chemistry last year. So Hurts is struggling. I also think they're struggling with Nick Sirianni and this offensive play calling. It's just not sure what it wants to be. And all of a sudden, with Miles Sanders out, they're doing this weird 3-headed monster. Jordan Howard got the touchdown. Kevin Gainwell got a touchdown. Boston Scott suddenly went from the number 1 back to kind of the number 3 here. Gainwell randomly scored here in the red zone. Howard still getting some key touches. So very frustrating to try to read this Eagles committee without Miles Sanders. It was very hard to watch Miles Sanders not get the ball enough. Now it's hard to watch all these guys get the ball a lot and will contain Hurts. So they got to figure out something in Sirianni. It's pretty bad. Will we see Gardner Minshew at some point? The problem is Hurts does enough with his legs and playmaking and all that where he keeps the Eagles in the game, but he doesn't quite finish. So he's a guy that's been above average, but not quite what they're looking for at quarterback. But I think a lot of that has to do with play calling and just not figuring out how to streamline this offense here when they need to with the right personnel. So a tough one there, but Devonta Smith, good luck trusting him going forward. Hurts, trust at your own risk. Again, hopefully he gets enough rushing yards and a touchdown like he did in this one to make him playable, but still, second straight underwhelming performance here for a guy that had been a pretty easy QB1 for the first half of the season. Guy that wasn't a QB1 for his real team was Jordan Love, the Packers and Chiefs. I mean, Jordan Love didn't look very good. I mean, part of it was a tough game on the road at Arrowhead Stadium, short week here, not knowing that Aaron Rodgers was ruled out until Monday, preparing for his first start. The Chiefs defense played a lot better. They blitzed a lot. They found their groove with Steve Spagnuolo. Chris Jones was healthy to help disrupt things up front here. Packers offensive line didn't play all that well in this one. Missed David Bakhtiari here and some other guys there up front. So, and they didn't have the tight end security blanket and Robert Tunyon. They tried a little bit with Josiah DeGara in the second half, but again, it just was not a good situation here. The Chiefs defense, very aggressive, and the Packers defense played really well. So there wasn't enough where Love could just put up pure garbage time. He ends up with one touchdown pass late to Al Lazard, but he cut down the value of Devontae Adams. They couldn't stay on the field for A.J. Dillon and Aaron Jones to be effective. So it was a disaster all around. The Chiefs didn't score enough to help Love in the passing game, put up high volume, and the Packers couldn't run enough to win this game and weren't effective enough there. So hopefully Aaron Rodgers returns. He'll restore everything in its offense when they play the Seahawks, another weak defense that'll be at home, so that'll help a lot there should Rodgers, and everyone will be restored to their normal value, starting with Adams and Jones in that game. So let's watch out. He can be cleared there on Saturday. Hopefully that'll be the case, and the Packers can find their groove back in Lambeau. But chalk this one up to Love playing. We knew that it could be tough for all their offensive principles around the second-year quarterback making his first start, and that's what we saw here. Now, the Chiefs' offense, they weren't that good either. Travis Kelce ends up with the best game, scores a touchdown. There's Darrell Williams, Derek Gore, backfield. Good luck trying to figure that out. It was a lot of Darrell Williams, but he couldn't score a touchdown. They gave him some chances, so I don't know what to do. Clyde Edwards-Helaire also could be back here for the Chiefs in the next game, so a lot of things to monitor there. With the Chiefs, Patrick Mahomes just kind of grinded away. I think he was a little tentative. They tried to protect the ball. He had more turnovers in this game, but in the end, they played a clean game. They played a turnover-free, a little bit of penalties there, but the Chiefs just try to get well and try to grind one out. So I think, in a way, grinding one out that way, realizing your defense can be pretty good and pick you up, and Patrick Mahomes can still get the key play to Kelce, and then you have the key Mahomes-like play where he bought time and found Tyreek Hill downfield. Unfortunately, Hill didn't have a big game as we thought, with the Packers secondary having issues. But again, the Chiefs were playing close to the vest here, knowing the Packers had some offensive limitations. So again, Mahomes, you need to have resistance here in fantasy football to play. And when Jordan Love is not providing the resistance that Rodgers would have, there wasn't a lot of compelling reasons for Mahomes to put the ball in harm's way, especially with the defense playing well, the running game responding well, and doing just enough to win this game as the Packers didn't put up much of a fight. So that sometimes happens, and we saw that develop in a lot of games this week. The Cardinals didn't care that they didn't have Kyler Murray in their game against the 49ers. Colt McCoy was very efficient, good facilitator. The biggest thing the Cardinals did was run the ball at a high level. The big development here is that 3 more touchdowns for James Conner, replacing Chase Edmonds, who had an ankle injury this game. He came in with a shoulder injury, was a little bit limited. Then he was ruled out with the ankle. So it became all about James Conner, the Terminator, there showing up in the running game. All he's done is score red zone touchdowns. He made a big play also as a receiver with Edmonds out. And keep in mind, DeAndre Hopkins is out. A.J. Green is out. So he thought, okay, we're locking in with Christian Kirk and Rondale Moore. No, they go to their guy Wesley there, kind of a tight end wide receiver hybrid. You had the Zach Ertz catch balls, and then James Conner do the rest here in the running game. Big play as a receiver here. And they didn't face much resistance. Again, it wasn't a shootout with Jimmy Garoppolo struggling on the other side for the most part. I know he had the touchdowns to George Kittle and Brandon Ayuk. There, and Kittle and Ayuk finally woke up here in this offense to support Deebo Samuel all of a sudden here for Kyle Shanahan. Maybe the desperation is kicking in, where the 49ers are not very good right now, 3-5, and should have played a lot better in this game. But the run defense stank. What you had here pretty much was a lot of Connor until Eno Benjamin came in and closed the door on the 49ers. So, yeah, that's one of those days here. We expect Green will be back next week, cleared from COVID-19. We'll see about Hopkins. He never misses games, so the hamstring is an issue. We'll see about Murray also for their next game. So a lot of things we have to see here for the Cardinals here. But again, McCoy didn't have to facilitate the James Conner show here, and not much else there that you could put your hat on here. Moore was used very limitedly here with Edmonds getting hurt, so that was a bummer there. And Christian Kirk had a decent game, but the running game was just too easy here, not enough resistance for McCoy to put the ball up often there. It's the 49ers. Garoppolo looked decent, but he also had the turnovers. Will they replace him with Trey Lance coming up around the corner? Something we have to watch for sure, but at least they got Ayuk involved and Kittle involved. So back to what we were looking at for the big three with Deebo and George and Brandon. This is what we wanted from this 49ers offense. So at least that was there. Eli Mitchell looked pretty good, but again, the game script took them out of the running game element here, and Jeff Wilson was available. So yeah, I think the 49ers are going to have to keep passing because I think their defense is still going to stink, and it was terrible in this game. I mean, it was struggling against the pass, but it also struggled against the run. They didn't have Jaquaski Tart or Jimmy Ward there at safety. So middle of the field was opened up here. It's pretty bad. This 49ers defense is a shell of what it once was. At least the offense is going to pass a little bit more. At least Ayuk came alive. At least Kittle looked pretty healthy coming back from his calf injury in this one. So we'll take what we can get in fantasy football, but in reality, 49ers not a good team, and their running game is going to be very inconsistent. Because of that, maybe Trey Lance will get a chance here pretty soon if they slowly fade, and that might actually spark the running game because of Lance's athleticism versus Garoppolo. But at the same time, it also could drag down these guys that are at least Samuel, Kittle, and Ayuk producing. So with Kittle back, maybe Samuel could maybe see a lesser role here. The focus was on him, but interesting that they let Ayuk loose here in this one against the Cardinals. The final game we'll talk about was Sunday Night Football. What yet another surprise. If in case the surprises of the early games weren't enough, a lot of stuff we're breaking down here for you. The Rams looked terrible. They got a garbage touchdown late there. That was it. It was Sonny Michel catching the ball. And why it was Sonny Michel is Darrell Henderson suffered an ankle injury late. So could this be the Henderson injury that opens things up for Michel in this running game? It could be. We'll see. We'll have to monitor that here all week. Matthew Stafford, just a clunker game. He had those back-to-back interceptions in the first half. The second was returned for a pick six by Kevin Byard here, the outstanding safety, big playmaker for the Titans. So they just got smashed in the mouth of this game. So bad game for Stafford. 2 picks. Salvaged his day a little bit with that garbage touchdown on the last gasp drive. But Cooper Kupp and Robert Woods had pretty good receiving yardage games, but no touchdowns for either of them. You had Tyler Higbee had a touchdown called back where he stepped out on the line. You had some bigger potential. Van Jefferson missed on a few connections there downfield. So it was a bad game by Stafford. At least he got Woods and Kupp enough volume because of the negative game script to give them decent games. But yeah, this one falls on Stafford. He just wasn't right. The pressure was in his face. He didn't fight it very well in this one. And the offensive line for the Rams really broke down against the front there. Nico Autry there and Jeffrey Simmons really owned them up front. And on the back end, they were ready to make a big play. So they just physically smashed the Rams around. The finesse Rams and their big play offense kind of succumbed to just Mike Vrabel's team smashing them around. So that can happen. Now we have to see what happens with Henderson and Michel. It's still the Woods and Kupp that we trust most over Jefferson. Stafford should rebound fine from this game. But a lot can happen, and the Titans really took it to them. Now, the Titans didn't have a lot offensively themselves. I mean, A.J. Brown was contained for the most part by Jalen Ramsey. Julio Jones had a decent game, but not much there from the hamstring returning. So keep in mind, the Titans didn't really light it up. Even though that scoreboard scored 28 points, one was a defensive score. One was when the Rams were worn down, and they got Adrian Peterson to dive in the end zone. He ends up with the most carries there, but split weird backfield. Dante Foreman actually was the most impressive back. Jeremy McNichols I told you he wasn't going to be anything that we're going to look at. Peterson knew he's Adrian Peterson. Teams and teammates and coaches seem to love this guy and want to keep getting him the ball. So he gets a touchdown to salvage his day late as an RB2/flex. But again, I'm not buying into Foreman or McNichols. As Peterson gets healthier and back into game shape here, getting ready to go in the flow of this offense, I think Peterson's going to get more and more work here and could see as many as double as his 10 carries in this one up to 20 touches here pretty soon. So trusting someone to replace Derrick Henry with decent value, it's still going to be Peterson in this one. Brown just ran in a tough matchup against Ramsey. He was playing through injury. He played pretty well, but the Ramsey matchup was just too hard to break free. And then the Titans didn't have the passing volume we expected because they smashed this game with their defense. And so not a lot there to see with Tannehill. But we'll see how it plays out next week here for the Titans. But, yeah, good game all around for their defense. And Peterson is there. Brown is still going to be leading receiver. Not much else to see there with Ryan Tannehill in this passing game. So there you have it. There's a breakdown here of all the games of Sunday's action. So a little bit longer, extended to roundup Monday today, but there was a lot to talk about, so we'll break it down. So good luck if you still have anyone going in the Bears-Steelers game and you need to win that matchup. Hopefully you can get what you need there. Thanks for making Locked On Fantasy Football your first listen every day. Again, tomorrow's Pickup Tuesday, where we look at the waiver wire ahead of Week 10. Now, make your second listen to the Peacock and Williamson NFL show. Brian Peacock and former NFL scout Matt Williamson give you the expert NFL. Listen in less than 30 minutes. It's free and available to you on all platforms. For Locked On Fantasy Football, this has been Vinnie Iyer. Thanks again for this extended Roundup Monday coming out of Week 9. And we'll turn our attention to Week 10 tomorrow. Waiver wire, Pickup Tuesday.